Okay, the Committee of Finance will come to order. And today we have our last informational briefing with our departments, Department of Human Services.
Morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Kathy Betts. I'm the Director for the Department of Human Services. Chair, I'd like to go through a brief intro overview for new members of the department, and then if okay with you, I'd like to turn it over to HPHA to go over their budget requests.
Yes, please, proceed.
And then from there on, I realize that there are many HMSIDs on the agenda that don't have budget requests, so if I could group them by program versus HMSID. Okay,
That's
great,
fine.
thank you. Thank you for your support of the department and our staff as we continue to meet the demand for services and benefits throughout our community. Our department's vision is that the people of Hawaii are thriving. We do this by treating others with aloha and dignity, recognizing that poverty, past trauma, living with disabilities, and inadequate access to health care can have a long-lasting impact on our families' health and well-being. DHS consists of 4 major divisions, including the Benefit, Employment, and Support Services Division, also known as BESD, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, DVR, Social Services Division, which oversees the Adult Protective and Community Services Branch, as well as Child Welfare Services, and the MedQuest Division. Additionally, we oversee 3 attached agencies, Office of Youth Services, Hawaii Public Housing Authority, and the new statewide Office on Homelessness and Housing. Finally, we oversee 4 attached commissions, the Commission on the Status of Women, the Commission on Fatherhood, the new LGBTQ+ Commission, and the State Rehabilitation Council. We also have 6 staff offices that are here today that assist in providing services to the entire departmental staff and divisions, including a small staff in the director's office. And we have roughly 2,300 positions, more than 80 statewide offices, with an overall budget of $3.8 billion, 65% of which are federal funds. While much of the state is enjoying a post-pandemic normal, our staff has been working at a frenetic pace since the beginning of the pandemic. You witnessed as we quickly ramped up to meet the groundswell and need for benefits during March of 2020. It required intentional and quick decision-making, a large investment in technology and equipment to allow our staff to have all of the necessary tools at their fingertips, regardless of where they were and were working. It required a constant and quick pivot for when federal waivers were put in place, new funding streams were created, and when those federal waivers began to terminate. With the imminent ending of the public health emergency on the federal level, we must quickly review the federal changes to ensure our programs are complying with federal law and ensure that the public and our communities are aware of the upcoming changes due to the Congressional Appropriations Act of 2023, also known as the Omnibus Measure, that was passed by Congress last month. Those changes include delinking the FMAP rate from the continuous coverage requirement by Medicaid, and a federal end to the SNAP emergency allotment, which has allowed our families an additional $200 in monthly food benefits during the pandemic. Our Medicaid team dealt with a near doubling of applications within weeks of the shutdown and throughout 2020. With nearly all employees remote working, there was 0 backlog. And that's how we know the majority of our DHS employees have been productive and efficient regardless of where they're sitting. Our Child Care Programs Office and Licensing Office, with a total staff of 7, dispersed $163 million in federal relief funds to child care providers and subsidy families over the last 2 years, on top of their regular duties of licensing and regulating child care. I'm humbled by the fact that it was our DHS employees that kept Hawaii's people safe, fed, and healthy for the last 3 years while they navigated the various impacts of the pandemic. Our budget requests reflect our collective values: retention and support of our workforce, strengthening the state's safety net, ensuring access to benefits for our state's residents, all while leveraging federal funds at every opportunity that we have. We continue to modernize our technology infrastructure, which will in turn support our residents and our staff. We thank you for your continued support of our department. Thank you for this opportunity to review our budget requests. At this point, Chair and Vice Chair, I'd like to just introduce our leadership team here today. Daisy Hartsfield is our Social Services Division Administrator. Thank you. Judy Moore Peterson is our MedQuest Administrator. Scott Moore Shige is our BESD Administrator. Representing Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, we have Shauna Tanner and Leah Diaz. Leanne Gillespie, who's the Executive Director of the Office of Youth Services. Hakeem Wansafi, Director of the Hawaii Public Housing Authority. At this point, Chair and Vice Chair, I'd like to turn it over to Hakeem to go over his budget request, and then we'll go through the rest of the DHS programs.
Proceed.
Thank you. Hakeem.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. It's good to see some familiar faces, and congratulations to the new elected representative, Hakeem Wansafi, Executive Director of the Hawaii Public Housing Authority. Just to give a very short introduction about the agency. We have been in business since 1935. We are the 13th largest in the country out of the 3,300 housing authorities. And overall, in all the programs, we are the 24th largest. In all, we serve 45,000 tenants in a variety of different programs. We are 90% federally funded, and out of all the positions, 305 that are currently filled, only one that is A-funded. We have approximately 5,400 federally funded units, 864 state-funded, and a budget authority for a variety of different vouchers, including the traditional Section 8 vouchers that is managed here in Oahu. The other counties do their own vouch. The non-elderly disabled vouchers, veteran affairs supportive housing, also known as VATCH, foster youth initiative vouchers, tenant protection, project-based and performance-based contract. In a performance-based contract, we manage 3,000 different homes. HMS 229 is the administration of the HPHA, and I'd like to highlight some budget requests, and of course I'm here to answer any questions or more information about the Housing Authority. For our budget request, Table 3, page 79, HMS 220 and HMS 222, we are requesting increase in ceiling for the federal fund ceiling for each of the program ID. That's 220 and 229. This is needed because of the anticipated grant awards for the Section 8 program. Table 4, page 84, HMS 222, we are requesting $500,000 for the rent supplement program. The rent supplement program is 100% state funded, where it gives up to $500 for those who come out short each month on paying the rent. Over 80% of those folks are elderly and disabled. And page 15, table 15, page 142, HMS 220, Governor Ige authorized CIP lump of $10 million. Those are the budget requests that you have, and I'm here to answer any questions or follow-ups on any item. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chair and Vice Chair, if we go through the order of Governor's decision in the narrative, starting on page 25, that's where the rest of our budget requests come in. So HMS 501, 503, that's Office of Youth Services and Hawaii Youth Correctional Facility.
Hi, good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Thank you very much for having us here today. My name is Leanne Gillespie. I'm the Executive Director for the Office of Youth Services. We oversee the Hawaii Youth Correctional Facility, the Kauailoa Youth and Family Center, and we also oversee approximately 50 general fund contracts in the community for at-risk youth to prevent them from entering into or moving through the juvenile justice system. I'll be talking about our budget requests for both the Hawaii Youth Correctional Facility and the operational expenses for OIS. For CIP funds for the youth facility, we're requesting $1.55 million for sewer system improvements. This is both for planning and construction. Phase 1, back in about 2018, 2 cesspools were found on property at Kauailoa. They are active and operational. So phase 1 will include decommissioning and removing these cesspools, and then phase 2 will actually involve other improvements to our sewer system, like cracked pipes and blocked pipes, and correcting those issues. Our second request is for $4.9 million for water system improvements on the Kauailoa campus. This would include both planning and construction, replacing pumps, adding flow monitoring equipment, and repair of existing water tanks and valves. Moving on for operational expenses for 501 in community youth programs, we're requesting governor's decision of about $870,000 for the Safe Places program. This Act 130, was passed last year and provided, it's a 3-year pilot program that provided 1 year of funding. So we're requesting for additional funding to continue the pilot program. We're requesting $832,000 for contract operating expenses. This was a cut from previous budget years and then covered with ARPA funds, which expire at the end of this fiscal year. For the Hawaii Youth Correctional Facility, for operating funds, requesting $520,000. This is, again, ARPA funds that are ending at the end of June. They are to cover utilities, repair, and maintenance costs for our Kauai Loa program campus. Again, this is not just the Hawaii Youth Correctional Facility, but we have several programs on campus that operate in our building facilities that we do pay for those costs. The last is for sex trafficking victim support. We do have on the Kauai Loa campus, run by Halakipa, a sex trafficking assessment center for youth that can go to get assessment and referral to services. This is an emergency shelter program. Funding ends in June 30th of this year. I'm available for any questions.
Okay, we're going to do all the questions at the end.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to HMS 777, that's the newly created Office on Homelessness and Housing Services. James Koshiba can cover those budget requests.
Morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is James Koshiba. I'm the new Governor's Coordinator of Homelessness on homelessness. I'm 2.5 weeks into my new job at this point, and so I will do my best to answer questions about the specific program IDs as part of this budget request. But there may be things that I can't answer today. I'll get the answers to you as soon as I possibly can, and may have to lean on my colleagues as well. Wanted to take a minute just to introduce a little bit about myself, the office, and some of the priorities that are being shaped with Governor. So I believe I was tapped for this position primarily because of my experience and perspective working with the unsheltered homeless population. Spent the last 5 years doing weekly street outreach to multiple encampments across Oahu and built a very close working relationship with the folks at Pu'uhonoa Owainai, Twinkle Gorge. And for the last 18 months before I took this position was the fundraiser, project manager, and support for the development of their permanent home on 20 acres of land that their nonprofit purchased to house all 250 people who are currently living unhoused at the Waianae Boat Harbor. So what I bring to the table and the kinds of questions I can answer today include things that I've learned from those experiences. Again, the experiences and perspective of those who are unsheltered, and also some thoughts and ideas about innovative approaches to housing our unhoused neighbors. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been meeting with Governor and other stakeholders in the community to start to shape some preliminary priorities. So I'd like to share those with you today. They provide some context for the budget request. Just a few things I'd mention off the bat in terms of the environment that we're operating in. The state as a whole has made some great strides in reducing certain subpopulations of homelessness. Families and children in particular have seen great declines. Where we've struggled and continue to struggle is with unsheltered homelessness. We've seen the number of unsheltered people on our streets increase pretty consistently for the last 10 years, and so that's where our focus is. A handful of priorities that are emerging, and I would emphasize that these are still being shaped both within the administration and with community stakeholders. We all know that the permanent solution to this is not moving people from place to place or going from temporary placement to temporary placement. We need long-term permanent spaces for people to go. And so priority number one is expanding the inventory of deeply affordable and supportive housing through vouchers, through acquisition, through new construction. Priority number two is we also need to, while we expand that inventory of conventional affordable housing, we need to test some non-traditional solutions to this issue because we still don't have good ways to construct and operate deeply affordable housing that aren't extremely costly, right? The construction and operation ends up being costly. So we need to test some non-traditional solutions. Kauhale is among these solutions. Village-style solutions, low-cost, low-footprint housing that can be stood up quickly and that can quickly house people on the street. Along with that, we'll need to push for some expedited pathways for creating those projects to be constructed or acquired. Third is we have an urgent need to create more space for people with serious mental illness and behavioral health challenges. So we'll work to expand those spaces and make sure there's an efficient pathway to get people that treatment if they cannot care for themselves. Fourth is, it can take people months or years to qualify for and be placed into housing from the street. So we need to clear away all the obstacles along that path from street to home. And finally, and this may sound simplistic, but the fifth priority is to call every community back to aloha. And we know too well that often a person's journey from street to home is stopped in the last mile because they have a voucher, but they can't find a landlord to rent to them. Or there's a project that's proposed that could house houseless people, but it's stopped by not in my backyard opposition. And the message has to be that attitude of not in my backyard guarantees that homelessness will go on forever. We can't stop at that. We need to shift it to where in my backyard or yes in my backyard. Yeah. So those are some priorities, and our budget request includes two items. One is HMS 777, HH01, and that's for my office and positions. This is to sustain the office, my position, and 4 additional positions. And the description of my office is in your briefing materials, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that our office does. One is, of course, as my title suggests, we coordinate between the state, the counties, and private entities on solutions. But also importantly, part of my role is not only to create plans and strategies, but to test innovative solutions to prevent homelessness and identify gaps in the system. And that's where I feel like I can bring, some fresh perspective to the table. Key performance metrics are the number of people who are counted annually as homeless through the point-in-time count, and particularly the number of people experiencing unsheltered homelessness. We need to make sure that we're placing people into housing faster than people are finding their way onto the street. Yeah. The second component of the budget request is HMS 777 HHBF, and this is Ohana Zones. In 2018 and 2019, the legislature appropriated $32 million for the Ohana Zones pilot program. Since that time, those funds have been used across the state to fund programs that demonstrate creative solutions to both permanent supportive housing and also the supports and navigation to help people get into that housing and the steps along that journey. So this budget request is to renew funding for the Ohana Zones pilot program comparable to levels of the past. So the biennium request is $15 million a year for FY24 and FY25. And in addition to the materials, in addition to what's in your briefing materials, I would just emphasize one thing that has stood out to me over the past couple of weeks as I've consulted with counties that have been using these funds about their past achievements and their plans upcoming for the use of Ohana Zone funds. And these funds are actually filling a critical gap because the way counties and providers are using them is to fund programs, services, and housing that don't fit into the box of existing funding programs. Many of the existing funding sources are restricted by federal requirements under the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development. And I'll give you just a couple of examples. One is HUD cannot subsidize housing projects like the village-style housing that we're proposing that we've seen work in other places. To have tiny home units that share bathrooms and kitchens is not a model that HUD will fund. We know it works in an island community with a tradition in many cases of communal living, but again, something that can't be funded with federal dollars. And so Ohana Zone's money is funding projects like that. A second requirement of much of the HUD funding for homeless services is that it be prioritized for people experiencing chronic homelessness. And that is a very specific definition under HUD requirements. It's being homeless for 1 year or more and having a disability. And so if you don't fit in that category, your options are often limited. And so Ohana Zone's funding is being used to fill those gaps in service. So mahalo, and I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Moving on to HMS 224, which is Homeless Services, 302, which is General Support for Child Care, and 903, which is Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. We have Scott Morishige, Administrator for BESD.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and members. Again, Scott Morishige, Division Administrator for the Benefit, Employment, and Support Services Division, also known as BESD. Our division is responsible for public benefits programs, including TANF, General Assistance, SNAP, Child Care, Employment and Job Training Programs, and Homeless Services. We have several program IDs, but we only have requests for the three that the Director mentioned, HMS 224, HMS 302, and HMS 903. So I'll start with HMS 224, Homeless Services. Just clarify, for those who may have questions, the distinction between our program ID and HMS 777. As James mentioned, 777 is for broad policy guidance, coordination, and innovation. HMS 224 is contracting for the existing homeless services that make up the core of our homeless service delivery system. Our budget request for HMS 224 includes a request for funding to continue 4 programs that are existing homeless services that have been funded for the past biennium with V funds, or American Rescue Plan Act funds. We're asking for A funds to continue these existing services on a recurring basis moving forward. So the 4 programs would be the Family Assessment Centers, that's HMS 22401. We're requesting $1.55 million in A funds on a recurring basis. The Family Assessment Centers are, we have 2 locations, one here on Oahu and one in Puna on Hawaii Island. And they are low barrier emergency shelters for families with minor children. Our second request under 224 is 22405 for our Housing First program that provides permanent supportive housing for chronically homeless individuals, including a combination of rental subsidy and ongoing case management. And that request is for $3.75 million on a recurring basis. Third request is 22403, which is for a rapid rehousing program. This is for a program that provides short to medium term rental subsidies plus case management for people who are either directly experiencing homelessness or are at imminent risk. And our request is for $3.75 million, again in A funds on a recurring basis. And the fourth program we are requesting funding for is for homeless outreach and civil legal services. And homeless outreach is to provide services to engage people who are unsheltered, because as James mentioned, unsheltered homelessness is an urgent need in our community. And outreach workers build a relationship with those individuals and help them with applying for public benefits, getting documents ready for placement into housing, as well as assisting with ID. For the civil legal services piece of this, it's specifically related to the ID assistance, helping people request the vital documents that they need, whether it be a birth certificate, state ID, or a social security card. And our request is for $1.75 million on a recurring basis, again in A funds. Now the fifth item we're requesting funding for under HMS 224 is to establish and maintain a homeless services database. That's because we recognize the importance of having good quality data about our homeless service system so that we're able to use that data, analyze it, and use it to inform both policy and practice moving forward. And we're requesting $345,000 on a recurring basis, again in A funds for the database. Moving on to our other requests for HMS 302 general support for childcare. This is just a housekeeping request, and we're asking to correct salary and fringe for positions established by Act 248 last session. And then our last request is for HMS 903, general support for self-sufficiency services. And this is just asking to trade off funds from other current expenses to personnel services for an office assistant 3 position. Thank you for the opportunity for allowing Bessie to present our budget requests. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Moving to HMS 401, that's our MedQuest program. Judy Moore Peterson.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. I'm Judy Moore Peterson. I'm the MedQuest administrator. And we just have a few requests, and this is for HMS 401. The first one is for the Child Wellness Incentive Pilot Program. The last session, Act 127 was passed, and it provided for the funding to implement this pilot program, but it was only for 1 year, and the pilot program is for 5 years, and so this request of about $4.5 million is to continue to sustain that pilot program. Then the other request that I wanted to cover is for an increase in a general fund amount of $5.6 million for a rebasing and up to cost for our nursing facilities. As many of you know, they're struggling a lot within the community. They're struggling to serve Medicaid, and they're struggling with capacity and being able to hire, et cetera. Last legislative session, some monies were appropriated as one-time payments, and this envisions not just replacing those one-time payments, but rather we have to change the methodology in how we pay for nursing facilities anyway, and so just using that opportunity to invest more so that they can be more sustainable and take our Medicaid folks. The third request is regarding professional fees. What was included in the an increase in professional fees for healthcare providers. In the Governor Eager request, there is an amount of $5 million and then $10 million of A funds. Governor Green has already announced that he will be increasing that amount so that the total amount that being requested will be $30 million in A funds. That would also leverage $43 million in N funds. So I'm not doing my math, but $73 million in total. So the reason for that is to, again, healthcare providers are struggling currently, and this would allow us to bring up the fee schedule up to the equivalent of 100% of Medicare, which will help the healthcare providers be more sustainable over the long run. The only other request that I wanted to at least flag for you is that it's related to a couple of bills that are being introduced regarding the sustainability programs for both the hospital and the nursing facility sustainability programs. Normally we come every 2 years and we get that renewed, and this year we're actually requesting, in working in conjunction with the Healthcare Association of Hawaii, of making those programs be permanent. So not having to come back every 2 years and getting them renewed. There's a budget request that we submitted that you will be, that you may have access to recognize those funds as B funds in our 401 budget for both the hospital and the nursing facility sustainability funds. Those are the major requests that we have currently, and afterwards I'll be available for any questions. Thank you.
Moving over to HMS 301 Child Protective Services, that will be represented by Social Services Division Administrator Daisy Hartsfield. Thank you, Director. Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I am Daisy Hartsfield. Within the Social Services Division, the programs, in addition to 301, are 303, 601, 605, and 901. Our division submitted a total of 16 budget requests to the governor. However, at this time, only 3 of them are included in the governor's decision, and they're all in HMS 301, and those are the requests that I will be sharing with you today. The first of those requests has to do with the Spouse and Child Abuse Special Fund. And last session, we did have a bill that was passed that increased the ceiling in that account to $5 million. We also had a request last session that included appropriation ceiling of the same amount in our budget request, but that unfortunately was not approved, which is why we're requesting that again this year. And we have been informed by Budget and Finance that we need that ceiling appropriation in order to access the additional amount. Currently, the appropriation ceiling is a little over 1 million. So currently we can only access up to that ceiling amount. And that's why we're requesting the ceiling to be increased to 5 million so that we can access up to 5 million. And that 5 million is anticipated to come from federal reimbursements amounts, which are allowed to be deposited into that SCASF account. And what we would like to do is to repurpose those reimbursements and use them to fund our preventive services, which we project will be at approximately $5 million. So that's the reasoning behind that request. The other 2 requests are primarily housekeeping matters, specifically to align the salaries that were created last session for our Family First Hawaii Prevention Program. And the salaries that were created was actually more than what the position classification requires. So we're asking for that adjustment so that it aligns with those specific positions. And then the third request also has to do with alignment of position numbers in our child welfare services. So our position numbers have fluctuated due to positions being budgeted, unbudgeted, added, etc. So currently, the approved number of positions is 389.5, and so that budget request is just to align it with what has been approved. And I'll also be available for any questions regarding our requests. Mahalo.
Moving on to HMS 904, that's DHS General Administration and Director's Office. We have a request in for adding $605,000 for Family Resource Centers for FY 24 and 25. That's to continue the Family Resource Center Coordinator position and the Family Resource Centers Pilot Program established by Act 129, Session Laws, Hawaii 2022. Family Resource Centers are vital community service hubs, and they offer opportunities to support and strengthen families. Moving on to 90406, add support for Commission on Fatherhood. The Commission on Fatherhood was created by Act 156 in Session Laws, Hawaii 2003. They have very little funding. It's a volunteer commission. It's very difficult for them to live up to their statutory mandates without some funding. So we're requesting $4,000 for the Commission on Fatherhood. Let's see, 90401, that's just to delete positions and funds for the Office of Governor's Coordinator because they're going to be switched to HMS 777, which is the newly created Office on Homelessness and Housing. Moving on to HMS 802, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. I believe Shauna Tanner will discuss the federal funding ceiling increase. And just as an aside, we do have several other budget requests that are pending before Governor Green. So those are going through the budget process. If you do have questions, we're happy to answer, but we are cognizant of the fact that they're still pending before Budget and Finance and Governor.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, Representatives. I'm Shauna Tanner with the Division of Vocational Rehab. So, brief overview of our program. Our program exists to assist individuals with disabilities with preparing for, maintaining, regaining, and advancing into employment. Not only does our division support our clients that come to us for assistance, it also supports employers and the community in general by providing them with independence, income to support our communities, and all of us as a whole, as a state. So as for our requests, I'm gonna have Leah Diaz first discuss on our CIP. She is the branch administrator for our services for the blind branch, also known as Ho'opono. Thank you.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, Committee. I am Leah Diaz, as Shauna mentioned. I am the administrator of Ho'opono, which is our services for the blind branch at DVR. And we have two requests. One is for a CIP request for a total of $495,000. We have a building on Oahu in the kind of Nu'uanu Liliha area, and it was built in 1964, and it's in need of much repair. Right now, we're requesting this $495,000 for design and construction for health, safety, energy conservation, and cost savings concerns. That amount is made up of $69,563 for a mechanical enclosure. And what that is an air conditioning system outside of our building, which is open and exposed to the elements. And it's a relatively new air conditioning system, and it's already starting to rust. It's open so that it's been victim of vandalism and all kinds of things. So it's still working, and we want to keep it working and safe, so we are requesting to be able to enclose that air conditioning system. Secondly, we have two buildings, buildings A and B, and we're requesting for retro commissioning of certain outdated fixtures in the building for an amount of $26,251. We have many fixtures which are outdated or breaking down, are not energy efficient, and I believe that this not only contributes to health and safety, but also to eventually lowering costs for the building. And then finally, for painting exteriors of buildings A and B for a total amount of $397,688. That's for design and construction. Health and safety again, and the building is made of concrete, and the paint is not just for cosmetics, it's to prevent the further degradation of the building. So those are our two CIP requests for Ho'opono. And then also, part of Ho'opono is what's called the blind vending program. And in that program, we assist individuals who are legally blind with starting and running their own businesses. And the state assists by providing management consulting services and things like that. We have what's called a Randolph Shepherd revolving account, which does not request any state money at all. Money comes in from vending machines at blind vending facilities and from our Honolulu airport facilities. The issue with that is we have an expenditure ceiling on that account of $1.3 million. And we'd like to raise that level to $2 million to just allow us to spend the money that we have a little more, especially now as we're still in pandemic, but kind of coming out, and our business folks who are blind need more things. We need some renovations. We need some new equipment for them and things like that in their stores. So that is the request. And Shauna and I will be here for any questions. Thank you.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, that concludes the budget request for the Department of Human Services. We're all here and available to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, thank you very much. Members will open to questions. Representative Rico.
Thank you, Doctor, for being here. My question is about more for, I guess, homeless.
Sure.
I was at the airport on Wednesday, and I just happened to go down to the lobby, and I see this lady just doing something weird on the wall. And so as I was watching her, the janitor came by, and I asked him, how long has she been here? he says she's one of many that have been there for a very long time. So she's obviously mentally ill, homeless, but she leaves her trash wherever she goes. And the poor employee is saying, why? Nobody sees the workers, right? They go through this every day, and there just seems to be no help. What would you do with someone like that?
I think the reason why it feels endless and that worker and that situation are not isolated, right? I mean, there's examples of that in neighborhoods across this island and across the other islands too. And I think the reason it feels endless is because, simply put, there's not enough space, to actually, even if we can get a person engaged on the outreach side and a temporary placement into emergency shelter or some other placement, there's not a place, especially for a person with serious mental illness or behavioral health needs, there's not that long-term space to provide the care for folks. And so people end up cycling in and out of temporary shelter, of jail, of short-term hospital stay, and then back to the street. So that creating that space at the end of that continuum is the key, I believe.
So I guess my question would be, are you asking for funding where you can try to get that space for people like this? Because there are many all over.
Yeah, I'm still in the process of understanding what the opportunities are for expanding that space. And it's not just a DHS task. Obviously, it's going to require the collaboration of Department of Health, Adult Mental Health Division, and other players to be part of that solution. But I'm still learning and exploring what the options are.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Representative Ayub.
Thank you, Chair. Just following up on Representative Moriwaki's question. Morikawa, sorry, excuse me. I'm so sorry. Sorry. Now that we've lightened the mood, just following up on this question, what is the current capacity for providing these, how many people can we currently serve? And then what is your projection for the number that we need to serve? So what capacity do we need to get to so that we can address this problem?
Yeah, I'm still assessing, so I'd have to get back to you on that. Looking at the latest point in time count data, which is the homeless census, for unsheltered homeless individuals, it's about 1 in 3 who have, serious mental illness, a behavioral health need, or a disability. And so, and as far as capacity, there's hospital space, but there's different levels of housing and care. There's group homes, there's supportive housing, and then there's the really intensive inpatient. So I need to take some time to understand what the characteristics of that population are, that third that need those services, and what kinds of capacity in each of those categories there are. But I can get back to you.
Okay,
on my
appreciate
analysis.
it.
Mhm.
And my second question's on the youth correctional facility.
Oh.
Yes. good
Hi,
evening.
I've been to the facility a few times doing outreach there. I have questions about capacity there as well, and are there plans to expand? And how many people can you, or how many kids can you serve in the facility, and how the facility is operating right now?
Okay, thank you very much for your question. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to bring up Mark Patterson, the administrator for HYCF.
Perfect.
Thank you.
You mind me repeating that one more time?
Yeah, not a problem.
Thank you.
I just want to know about capacity at the facility. Are you over capacity? Are you under? How many are you serving right now? Do you need to expand the facility to serve more? Or?
Okay. Thank you, Representative Ayu. Aloha, everyone. Mark Patterson, Administrator of the Kawailoa Youth and Family Wellness Center. We're at a point in the history of our campus, which is a 95-year-old history, of looking at it as what it is, which is a campus, and not so much just a facility. All that we have left in terms of our correctional structures is one 30-bed correctional facility that currently houses about 15 incarcerated youth, 1 girl, 14 boys, from throughout the state. But in addition to that facility, as a result of the reduction of the incarcerated population, we have revamped the other structures, And we have asked the state back in 2018, we passed a law that created the Kawailoa Youth and Family Wellness Center and authorized the Office of Youth Service to create several types of programs for other populations. So on our campus, we have a population of homelessness, 18 to 24-year-olds. We have a minors homeless program. We have a program for victims of sex trafficking minors, a residential program. We have a vocational program that's both day program and residential program. And of course, we have Olomana High School, and we have a farm and a ranch at the same time. So when we look at where we are right now, that's almost close to 70 residential beds, as well as multiple day programs involving all of those youth. We average about 200 to 300 youth service a month at this particular time. We hope to get the facility to be at a level of 400 to 500 in the future. We do have a master plan that the House Finance gave us some money for several years ago that is in the works at this time. We are asking for the renovations of our sewer and water systems, which are antiquated. But we are gearing up for a whole new look at how we can do and respond to the juvenile justice reform by transforming the way that we can heal and take care of our most vulnerable youth and their families.
And then my last question, so you've made changes to the facility as far as the appearance and the look, because when I went there, it was very much like a jail or a prison where the doors lock and the guards call in for the doors to unlock. And
so the current facility that is still Hawaii Youth Correctional Facility is still a classified correctional facility.
But you're using portions of the building to
No.
do, oh, okay.
It's only for the correctional officers and my correctional staff.
Okay.
The majority of the campus is nonprofits and other state agencies working with youth.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Cochran, followed by you, followed by Keelan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, departments, for being here and sharing with us. I had my office, who's in charge or the contact coordinator for the Ohana Zones program? Is there someone here? Oh, Mr. Kushibo? Scott? Koshiba.
James.
Yeah, aloha.
Aloha.
Mahalo for all your work, and I believe you're a wonderful fit for this new program.
Thank you.
Because my office has been trying to reach out, and so now we know who it is, and we will be continuing this discussion.
Okay.
Also, you mentioned that federal funding or HUD cannot participate with your new concept, like the village type style of housing. So have you folks tried to reach out to our federal level to see if they can, talk to them on how this is a successful thing, and please, you take it into consideration to change that?
Haven't yet, but
Okay.
I have spoken to the local HUD office first, but
Okay.
yeah, that's the next step, is to reach out to the congressional delegation and on the federal side.
Okay, awesome. Well, anyway, I can help out with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, and obviously you've shown that it works. And then, just to follow up on Ms. Moriwaki's comments about, I don't know if this is. Oh, sorry. Oh, no, I did it again. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Moving on. I'm so sorry. Morikawa. Sorry. And the airports. The airports. She had great comments about the airports because I was there. And is it true that people there's states or other jurisdictions that are sending people one way, and thereby these people come off the plane and they're living within our airport? And until they get caught and found out, then they move into Waikiki or wherever they go out of there, because a baggage claim guy down there told me that I see them daily, 5, 6 plus per day, and they live in that airport for a month or two until they're caught and found out. Then they move on.
Yeah, I'm aware of instances of that happening in the past where people get a one-way ticket, so I can say it does happen. But if you look at the data collected through the point-in-time count and through our homeless management information system, it's actually a pretty small fraction of folks that are newcomers to Hawaii who are on the street. I think the last point-in-time count for the neighbor islands, Big Island asked that question specifically, are you a newcomer? And it was about 10% of folks. And then on Oahu, we used to ask a question as part of the point in time count on, how long have you been in Hawaii? And the vast majority of folks were 5 years or more. I think it was between 65 and 70% were 5 years or more.
Okay, Chair, sorry. Thank you for asking that question, because the question of the community, because in Lahaina, I represent West Maui. I used to get calls as a council member for 8 years. They're complaining about the other homeless. Like, they're new, I don't even recognize the other homeless, where are they from? So that's still ongoing in that town. So I'm just wondering if that's due to that factor of people sending one-way tickets. And then the other, sorry, and one last. I heard CPS, Child Protective Services, but I was told that it's actually CWS. So both of those those comments or programs were mentioned this morning. So what is it? Is it both one and the same, or is it two separate? Child Protective Services versus Child Welfare Services?
The branch is, that's a good question, Representative. The branch is considered and termed Child Welfare Services Branch, but there still is an HMS ID, which is 301 in the budget, that says that's Child Protective Services.
CPS.
Correct, and that's specifically for Child Welfare Services Branch, but it's still reflected in the budget, HMS ID as CPS. But they're known as the Child Welfare Services Branch.
What? Okay, I was, corrected the other day. I'm like, well, I just heard it though just now.
Right,
So,
and
okay.
we still use it kind of interchangeably because the term kind of changed.
Recently.
About a decade ago.
Oh, that's not recent.
But people know.
Yeah.
Call CPS, right? This is a CPS hotline.
Right.
So,
Good morning.
Just to make it easier,
Yes.
when it comes to the budget, it's known as CPS.
Okay.
Why, I'm not sure. The name never changed when the branch name changed. And the branch used to be Child Protective Services, but because of the stigma involved, there was a movement to change it to Child Welfare Services, which it is now known as.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
so hopefully that
They're still
answers your
protected
question.
though.
But we still provide
Yeah.
services
Okay.
to protect our vulnerable families. Yes,
All right. Thank you for that clarification. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Garrett.
Okay, thank you, Chair. First of all, just want to thank Director Betts and Deputy Director Campos for their willingness to serve. I was very excited to see Governor Green ask you folks to stay on with his administration. I have a question for the MedQuest division.
Hi, good morning.
Hi there, good morning. So in your testimony, you referenced the public health emergency. Can you talk us through the impact of the federal government declaring an end to that and what that would do to the Medicaid rolls? I know you noted here that our enrollment went up by about 140,000 members during this period.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that question and that opportunity to talk about the upcoming end. It's up for 3 years. The continuous coverage requirements that Medicaid had, in which we were not allowed to drop anybody from the Medicaid rolls if they applied and were deemed eligible, except for 3 reasons. And those 3 reasons were if they voluntarily asked to stop their Medicaid coverage, and we have had some experience with people asking for that, they move away, they move out of state, or they pass away. So those are the requirements that have been in place since March of 2020. However, on December 29th of 2022, the new Consolidated Appropriations Act was passed, which separates now, it actually provides a date certain by which those continuous coverage requirements will end, and that's March 31st in a few short months. So what we're doing and what we're allowed to do is we need to renew and redetermine the eligibility for all 460,000 people who are currently covered by the Medicaid program. That's 1 in 3, about 1 in 3 individuals in the state currently. So obviously we're not going to be able to do that on our own, and it doesn't start, everybody doesn't have to be redetermined for their eligibility starting April 1. It's not, all at the same time. So we'll divide everybody up. We'll spread it out over the 12-month time period that we have, and then we'll be asking for help, right? We'll be sending you all some information about what's going to be happening, because undoubtedly you'll get questions from your constituents, et cetera. So we'll be providing you all with information about what to look for, who to contact in our office, so that we can try to minimize the disruption. At this point, we only have, honestly, we don't know how many people will be renewed or how many people will drop off. And so during that process, our finance officer just recently tried to update our financial plan, but it's, we tried to use more conservative estimates as far as making sure that we would have sufficient funds. So we didn't want to overestimate the number of people who'd be dropping off. And so far, it looks like we'll be able to manage through with our current appropriation. All that being said, it'll be a lot of work. We'll need to rely on all of you, all community-based organizations, our health plans, and everyone in order to make it through this process.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. So I think you noted again in your testimony that the bulk of the 140,000 were people who applied after they lost their employment during the first shutdown in March of 2020. Are these employees, and we've heard from the state economist and UHERO that for the most part our economy has recovered. So is there a requirement for people who may have since regained employment if they were on Medicaid temporarily, or not necessarily temporarily, but as a result of that, to notify you folks that now they're eligible for private sector health coverage, or is there a chance that they're still on the rolls when they may be eligible from a job, a new job?
All of the above. I mean, there's no requirement that people are supposed to tell us when they get employment. All that being said, if they did, but they did not ask to get dropped from our rolls, then they would still have coverage, and that is allowed. People are allowed to have both employer-sponsored insurance or other forms of insurance and be covered by Medicaid at the same time. That's actually also why we have contracts that go out and look at all the insurance coverage and then identify those individuals, and then we make sure that the health plans know, so that we can have what's called coordination of benefits, so that Medicaid is the payer of last resort. So we're always looking for ways to improve that process, but nonetheless, that's what's gonna happen. Indeed, many people who are contacting us and saying, "Hey, I don't, thanks very much for the Medicaid coverage. We know it's been a lifesaver." They are now telling us, "I have a job, thank you very much, and I have insurance." We're expecting that that is going to happen as we go through this process. But again, there's many working families who still qualify for Medicaid because their jobs don't pay enough, and so they still qualify. They may have access to other forms of insurance, and they'll still qualify for Medicaid.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Peterson. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Representative Kila, followed by Ward.
Can I have questions for Hawaii Public Housing. Call away. Mahalo, Chair. I have questions for Hawaii Public Housing Authority.
Hi, aloha.
Hi, aloha, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. So you probably had one of the most important departments within your division when we talk about the many problems that we're facing here in Hawaii. So can you tell me how much people are on the wait list for public housing?
Okay, great. Thank you. We just opened the wait list. What we've done lately, when I took over the agency, we had about 15 to 20,000 applicants on wait list, and some of them were on the wait list for 10, 15 years. After we served all those folks, what we've done is anytime we have availability of units, we determine how many, and then we open and do a lottery system just to take those, so we don't give false hope and they can stay on the wait list for a long time. We anticipate opening the wait list in the next few weeks because we have some additional units to do. And our wait list currently, it's about 400 or so families combined. Mind you, when we open the wait list, we get 5, 6 to 10,000 applicants. And what we do, we just take what we can serve and then reopen it again when it's available.
So if the wait list is 20,000, what is the inventory that we have for serving our families?
It's I had to mumble it, so we actually currently running about 96% occupancy. So we have about 4 of those. Any unit that's vacant right now, it's going repairs and maintenance. As of today, there is 50 families that been processed so they can have the keys to their new homes. And we have approximately 340 something units that are vacant that are going for the repair and maintenance.
Sorry,
in
let me
any
clarify.
given year. I'm sorry.
What is the amount of housing 4 walls in the inventory of HPH?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Between state housing and federal housing, 6,200 units.
6,200 units.
Yes.
20,000 people waiting. Is the website under your purview?
It is.
Okay. I would like to see this website get a little bit more user friendly.
It's
Knowing
coming
that
up.
You have okay, good
Yeah.
to know.
Yeah,
This
thank you.
website is very bare
We-
bones.
We
How
teamed
long
up
have-
with the University of Hawaii, and a new updated fresh is coming soon.
Good.
Yeah.
How long have you been in the role?
This is my 12th legislative session.
Okay. I think a concern that comes up not just in my district but
Sure.
throughout the state is Section 8 abuse. How do you folks investigate and do due process?
Thank you. So every year we go through a process to recertify the folks by verifying all the paperwork. We require all the paperwork and go through it. If there is any abuse, whether somebody called us to complain about it or we learned about it, it depends on the severity of it. It can go all the way to the OAG, the Office of the Inspector General in Washington, D.C., and consequences are severe. Varies from jail time to repaying the entire thing. And I think one of the abuse that was recently in the news is somebody who actually worked for HUD get multiple years in jail. Yeah, so we are aware from time to time that folks who are not supposed to live there are doing. When we also monitor Craigslist and other places to see if anybody doing it.
Subleases.
Yeah.
Yeah. In sake of time,
Yes.
can you follow up with the committee and the amount of inquiries you got and what came out of it? So data that shows what you've inquired, and then data showing afterwards and what was resolutions that came out. What is your process for evaluating workers that oversee these public housing authorities? Because I will share a personal experience that I resided at the Nanakuli Public Housing Authority when we experienced homelessness. And living there personally, well, if you were here for the last 12 years, the systems that exist in HPHA does not allow our families to uplift. And it's almost living under dictatorship. The property manager is no longer there, but you folks took us to court and kicked us out of our property, all because he led that authority with a stern fist. And you can look at your turnover in that public housing authority, that you were running under 6 months of folks staying in there because of the people there. My concern is when you're putting these folks in these positions where they get on a power trip, you're contributing to homelessness. So I would love to know what is in place for you to evaluate the folks that work there to make sure they are always committed to the families that live there, please. And then my last question, what is HPHA doing for the folks who are residing in public housing to find financial sovereignty and financial counseling? Because I know that there are folks who are on fixed income, but I think the goal has always been that this serves as a barrier and break for them to find stability, to move into a more market, to allow 20,000 people waiting to have the same opportunities.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, we will not tolerate anybody who act as a dictator in housing. We're very clear, top to bottom, that we're here to serve the most vulnerable population. Anyone who may be found doing that will suffer consequences, because one of the things we always tell our staff, if you don't have the heart for it, find another job. And I will look into that specific case. I can tell you that our evictions are the lowest since the founding of the agency, and we don't evict except if there is an issue with, rarely I sign a writ that has to do with rent. We try to work with them and all of that, but I will definitely follow up on that. With regards to the last question, would you kindly just repeat that one?
And I want to, in sake of time, maybe you can provide this in writing. How is HPA contributing to the uplifting of the folks residing in your property?
Thank you.
For financial sovereignty and financial literacy?
So briefly, I don't have to answer. Okay.
In sake of time, if you could please provide that to the committee.
Happy to.
Mahalo, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Representative Ward.
Thank you, Chair. I have 3 questions. First, to the director, please. I love your mission statement. A Hawaii that is thriving, that is a high goal. How will you, are you measuring it, and how will you give us an update on that? Because that's...
We do have several metrics to measure that by. One of the guiding principles is our Ohananui statute that was enshrined in the our legislative statute about 2019. And that's really to look at multi-generational incidences of poverty and what those barriers are for families to uplift out of poverty. So a lot of our programs, one of the metrics is we, like I mentioned in my introduction, we're 65% federally funded. So one of the metrics really is to see how quick we can push those federal funds out to the families that need them, as well as state funds, and not lapse federal funds. Successfully over the last 3 years, I had mentioned our child care programs disseminated $162 million in federal funds over the last 2 years. Medicaid obviously is covering around 465,000 individuals in the state. We continue to look at ways that we can co-locate services and service delivery. We also really value cross-sector collaboration, not just with our community partners, but also with our state agencies. Those are all our guiding principles, and everyone here sitting here today has done an amazing job over the last 3 years. In specific metrics, I mean, we have key performance indicators that we follow. We do management evaluations every year of each single division that is here today, and those are part of our appendix inside of our narrative in our budget documents.
And clearly you are familiar with the ALICE studies.
Yes.
That to me is a measure of where we have a lot ways to go. And if you can say every year that ALICE families are getting less and less, that would be very encouraging. Finance committees love to have results, accomplishments. So the ALICE study to me is a rather embarrassment that we're not really economically viable when 58% of our people are on the borderline of poverty. And
I agree with you,
guys are charged
Representative.
with that.
What I believe is it's going to take our entire community to combat poverty. It's going to take all of us to look at ways that we can uplift individuals so that they can become economically self-sustaining and stable and thriving.
Exactly.
So I do believe that we work very closely with our community stakeholders, but as I mentioned in my introduction, our budget values we put them in the budget. And so what I think we all need to do and what we all need to remain cognizant of is that where we put our money shows our values as a community, as a state, as an island state. And so that's something that all of the individuals behind me live by. So I do agree with you.
We look forward to those metrics. Mr. Quinsafi, if I can do my second question.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Representative.
I have second question,
you have a
sir.
second question,
Yes.
please?
I had 3 actually, but this is the
Three
second one.
questions.
Mr. Quinsafi.
Yes, sir.
We have been told that we're probably 50 to 60,000 units short. Is that part of your game plan? Are you part of, we put on a lot of money into housing. We're going to build a stadium. Are you in discussions with them? What's your sense of the 60? Is the 60,000 units accurate? Is it less than that? And how are we going to whittle that away?
Thank you very much. So we're trying to play a role. HPHA is trying to play a role in that. The ongoing projects, we have an 800 senior projects down School Street. You have funded us for phase 1, shoveling the ground in August, 250 units. We've also for KPT phase 1, 304 units. We have gone through the process. We have obtained 201H applications, city and county, and we come in for funding this year. We're asking the governor. So in addition to that, yesterday we went in front of the board and they have approved that we go out for an RFQ for 10,000 units. So that's the part that we are playing.
Do you do any interface with the ADUs that the city and county has, where if you got 5,000 square feet on your property, we have a lot of property owners, encouraging them to be rental units? Is that any part of your Kuleana or your vision? Because there's ADU incentives that are out there.
We've been, since the new administration took over last month, it's been a tremendous amount of meetings and collaboration between counties and state on a variety of different levels, including that. I was only highlighting the new units that we are short and how we are able to at least attempt to build and make a dent in the shortage of
Yeah,
housing.
there's a lot of private land that can help the public housing. Mr. Chair, if I may lastly ask a question to the housing czar, the new housing czar, but to thank the old housing czar, Scott Morishige. You said that HUD will not fund Kauhalis. I mean, what's going on? I mean, they're the housing agency and you can't get any money for, and by the way, I commend you for being one of the graduates of Twinkles. If you're familiar with what she's doing, she's a gem. Why is HUD not giving you guys any money? I mean, that seems contra.
Yeah, it's a fair question. My understanding of HUD rules is that they will only fund housing, or they will only certify housing as fit for human habitation if it has its own bathroom. And so for units that share a bathroom and a kitchen, their funds won't cover it. Now, to Representative Cochran's point, I think there's an opportunity to engage the federal delegation, and the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness came to visit Hawaii actually just a couple of months ago, visited Pu'uhonua, saw village models of living. So I think there is an opening to have that conversation with HUD and with the federal delegation.
And Auntie Blanche in Waimanalo, she's got a good example. Yep. So did they say, will you put in a toilet in these small places and we'll fund you? If so, could you do that?
It dramatically increases the development cost. So one of the great things about the village model, and the reason why it's an interesting one to look at for a new solution to long-term affordable housing to both build and operate, is that shared infrastructure. If folks are willing and able to share infrastructure, it brings the development costs down dramatically.
So, but you are still in communication. Thing is, before all we would hear is housing first, housing first. I haven't heard anybody say housing first yet. Has that been dropped as the mantra, or it's housing because we already accept it as inevitable, and small houses, big houses, whatever, is still what we're pushing as the formula for ending or at least managing homelessness?
No, my understanding is the Housing First program still exists, and there might be.
It just hasn't been mentioned, actually.
Just to clarify, one of our budget.
Yeah, can you come up to the mic, please?
Okay.
To answer.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay.
Yeah, just to clarify, one of our budget requests in 224 is to continue the state housing first
It's still the
program.
gold standard, quite frankly.
It's one of our core homeless services in
And
224.
if I know
homeless
what the
programs
governor
office.
wants, he wants more Kauhalis, whether it's HUD money or other money. I say build as many of those Kauhalis as you can. Auntie Blanche's example in the Waimanalo, or the Twinkles and Auntie Blanche, super homeless quasi-czars. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Representative Bayu.
Thank you, Chair. This is on the Section 8 vouchers again. I'm not sure who the best person to answer this question is, but you were talking about not in my backyard, Mr. Koshiba, earlier. What kind of programs are you guys offering for homeowners who might want to accept these kinds of vouchers but are unsure of the program, are unsure of if they're going to get the vouchers every month, to give homeowners the comfort that they want to accept this and open their homes or their rental apartments open to these individuals and to increase the supply?
Yeah, I'm still learning about the supports and incentives available, but I can tell you that there are programs available for landlords who are willing to accept voucher holders, and not just Section 8 vouchers, but state or county-funded vouchers to pay for any damages and to have a support for that landlord. Anytime if there's a voucher holder that's a tenant and they need support, a third party to call in for support, that support is provided. I don't know if there's.
So you're saying there are programs available, or we're working on what?
No, there are programs available now that offer those supports and incentives for landlords that are willing to hire and to rent to voucher holders.
Okay, and where can we find? Where can we find this information, or can you give that to the committee, please?
Happy to.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any? Representative Kobayashi.
For public housing, did you say that they were 340 units empty because of R&M?
Correct.
Some years ago, you had mentioned that there were something in the range of $700 to $800 million in R&M backlog. I don't understand.
Sure.
say for instance, it took $1 million to rehab each of the 340 units. You're still half of what $700 million, $800 million is.
Sure, thank you. So for the unit that we keep them at the very minimum required by HUD, which is safe, decent, and sanitary. In addition to that, to rehab and to bring new life into the property, that backlog is about $797 million, which includes adding more ADA units that are required under the law, and making the units accessible instead of just repairing a roof that's leaking, putting new roof so you can bring to life. So that. And with regards to this, I can. I just want to clarify with regard to Section 8 that we have implemented landlord incentive programs. We have 3 different incentives. We have communicated that to the landlords in general, and we have seen some results of that. We also changed our administrative rules to allow for that, and I believe the state legislature gave us some money to be able to do that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Members, we're going to have to go to session. Vice Chair has one final.
I just wanted to make a comment to Director and Deputy Director and to your whole department. I just wanted to thank you for all your work over the pandemic. You know, you guys really worked hard, and I just want you to know that it didn't go unnoticed. And I just wanted to recognize you publicly for that. And my office has reached out on behalf of constituents numerous times, and you all have been so quick to respond and just been so helpful. So I just wanted to publicly thank you and recognize you for your work over the past few years. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members, we're going to ask if you kind of know who people are, and you can call them and ask them for questions. We're going to have to move on to move to session. But the reason I'm ending a little earlier is because I want to talk to you before. So if the department could exit quietly, and then I'm going to speak to the department. So we're going to recess, but if you guys could stick around. I mean, we're going to adjourn. Thank you. Thank you very much, Richard. Thank you.